Hello, today I am going to be showing you the game Sagrada by Floodgate Games. This is a beautiful little game for 1 to 4 players by Daryl Andrews and Adrian Adamescu. This is a dice drafting game in which you're going to use these beautiful translucent dice in 5 different colors in order to fill a player board with dice according to specific placement rules, and with the help of special tool cards and objectives, you're going to try to be scoring the most points by the end of the game. The game lasts 10 rounds, and at the start of the game we're each going to take a player board in whatever color we want. There's 4 different player boards in the base game. The expansion does include a 5th player board if you wanted to play with 5 players. But you're going to take a player board, a score marker, put it next to this round track here, and you're going to get a secret objective card, which has this gray die on the back here. So each player's going to get a secret objective. You wouldn't show this to anybody, but essentially you're going to score points based off whatever color is there. So this player would score based off purple, and this player would score based off of blue. Then you're going to reveal then you're going to take a window pattern card. Each player is going to get 2 window pattern cards, and they are double-sided. The pattern cards have dots on the bottom of them, which denote their difficulty. So 3 dots is the easiest, and 6 dots is the hardest. So cards are either going to be 3 and 6, or possibly 4 and 5. So it's your choice if you want to play an easier or a harder card. It's completely up to you. The easier cards are generally going to be easier for you to fill, so you can score points based off what's going on here. But the circles at the bottom here aren't just for difficulty, they also denote how many of these favor stones that you can get. Favor stones are going to be used, they're worth a point at the end of the game for every one that you haven't used, but favor stones are also going to be used to utilize special abilities. These are called the tool cards. The tool cards will let you do things that sort of break the rules of the game. So I'm just going to slot something in here, and we'll say this person's going to take this, and I'll explain more as to how the game plays. So this person had 3, and this person has 6. These these favor tokens are out of the game now. You're never going to get any more. Once you've spent them, they're gone. So use them wisely. In addition to the secret objective cards that everyone got dealt secretly, those are only able to be scored by the players who have them. There's also going to be 3 public objective cards, which are cards that everyone is going to score points off of. So generally they're going to have a point value here, and then some type of description as to what you need to do in order to get this. So this says that for every column that has all different colors in the column, you're going to score 5 points. Now, if you had another card that, say, was also for columns, this card says you could score 4 points for every column that has a different number in each spot. These 2 could both score simultaneously. So you could score a column that has all different colors, and that same column could score all different numbers. That's totally okay. You want to try to be able to score as many of your public objectives obviously as possible, because that's how you're going to score some points. So how the game is played is, as I mentioned, it's a dice drafting game. So what that means is that depending on the number of players, and this is a 2-player game, depending on the number of players, you're going to take the number of dice equal to 2 times the number of players plus 1. So in a 2-player game, you're going to take 5 dice. In a 4-player game, you would take 9 dice. So taking the dice, you're going to roll them, and then depending on who the start player was, let's say it is this orange player, they're going to draft one of these dice. So they take one of their choice, and they need to place it on their board. Now, to place it on their board, the very first die they place has to be around and on an edge of the board. So we'll place that right there. Now, I'll also explain how these window cards work, because I mentioned earlier the placement restrictions. So on the cards, they will either have a white space, which means that there's no restriction whatsoever, or there will be a colored space, this purple, red, yellow. That means that only a purple, red, or yellow, whatever the color, whatever die that goes in there has to match this color. So that's a restriction there. Or it'll be a space that's shaded gray but has a specific number. So no other number die can be placed there unless it matches what this is. So if I were to draft this blue 6, I can place it right there. A not bright thing to do would be, let's say there was a purple 6 and I placed a purple 6 here. Well, now I've blocked myself because I'm never going to be able to place a purple die there, because the other restriction is that whenever you place a die, you cannot place anywhere orthogonally adjacent, that's up, down, left, right. You cannot place orthogonally adjacent to that die if it is either the same number or the same color. So even if this was a blue 6 here and I had a purple 6, even though that purple matches the color restriction, I would not be able to place it because it violates the rule about matching numbers next to each other. So you want to think about what you're taking, what you're placing. Once I place a die in a space, all future turns, I need to place a die that is either orthogonally or diagonally adjacent to a die that was previously placed. So if I place this one here, I could, let's just say that one was a 5. I could place the purple 5 there, or I could have placed a green 3 right here, and then next turn, next round I could place another one there, and then now all of these spaces are potential abilities for me to place somewhere. But in the beginning, you have to place the first die along an edge, and then every other subsequent die has to be placed next to a previously placed die as long as it meets the requirements and doesn't violate any of the restrictions on the card. So let's say I took that. Now, on your turn results in drafting a die, and then if you choose, you can also spend one of your favor stones to use one of the tools that are available. You can use a tool or not, it's up to you. Also, if there was nothing that you could draft that would fit in your board, or just you didn't want to take any of the dice, you could also pass a turn on taking the dice and just move on. So let's say I draft this blue 6, and then the next player is going to draft, say, this red 2. Now, how the game works is it's a snake draft. So basically it goes player 1, player 2, let's pretend there was a player 3, then it would go player 3, player 2, player 1. So we're going player 1, player 2, so player 2 just took their turn, now they're going to take their next turn, and they're going to draft that red 4 and place it right there. So now they've met both of their requirements in that scenario. Then it goes to player 1, and they'll take that purple 5, and then they'll take the remaining die and they place it on the round marker there. Now, I mentioned that the game is 10 rounds, so every round you're going to have a die that will continue on there, and there are some cards that might allow you to take these dice or maneuver them or do what you will with them, but at the end of the 10th round, the game is going to be over, and then we're just going to tally up points. Now, I mentioned also with the favor stones, if you're the first person to put a favor stone on a card, you get to use that ability, and sometimes they'll have special scenarios here. Like, so this is a draft ability. So it says when you're drafting a die, you can increase or decrease the value by 1. So it's handy, if you find yourself stuck in a position that is hard, like when the game is further on and you're trying to put something in here and they're all crammed up and you can't really figure out what you can do, you might want to spend a favor stone to use one of these tools to bump it up. Now, the issue is that if anybody has put a favor stone on a tool, if anybody else wants to use that tool, they now need to pay 2 favor stones in order to use it. And it doesn't matter now if somebody's paid 2, the next person still, if they want to use it again, they still just need to pay 2 again. It doesn't keep increasing. It's always, the first one is 1, and then every subsequent time you use it, anybody uses it, it's 2 favor stones. So as you can see, the second player is only down to 1 favor stone at this point. So they don't really have a whole lot of ability to mess with things, but their board is easier to place things. So it's a give and take there. So at the end of the game, let's just say this is the completed board here. So at the end of the game, we are going to tally up our points. So as I mentioned, you're going to take however many columns we have that have different numbers. So I have a 3, a 1, a 5, and a 6. So that's going to be worth 4 points. I have a 2, a 5, a 6, and a 3. That's worth another 4 points. So up to 8 points. Now colors. I have red, purple, blue, green. That's worth 5 points. Purple, yellow, blue, red. That's worth another 5 points. So now it's 18 points. These columns are incomplete, so they would not be scored with these 2 objectives. I also had the blue scoring objective. So I tally up the pips on all the blue dice that I have. So throughout the game, I might be trying to draft more higher value dice that match my private objective. So in this scenario, I have 4 plus 1 is 5, plus 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11, plus 6 is 17. So I have 17 points. Sorry, I should mention also that when it comes time to score, you move all the dice off the round marker, you flip it over, and it becomes a nice little scoring track. So, in the beginning I had, 18 points, so I moved it along to 18, and then I added 17 points to that, so that's 35, and then I have, this one says you get points for every diagonal color I have, so that's 1 diagonal, so that's 2 points, that's another 2 points, that's another 2 points, so another 6 points there. So that puts me up to 41. If I ever increased past the 50 mark there, I would just flip my scoring marker over, and there's a 50, and then I just continue tallying up my points. So 41 points for my objectives, and then I tally up however many of these unspent favor tokens that I have, and I earn a point for that. So 1, 2, 3. But then I also tally up every empty space that I have on my player board, and I subtract 1 point from that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that bumps me all the way back down to 40. And that's the end of the game. Whoever has the most points is the winner. If there is a tie, there are a number of tiebreakers that you can refer to the rule book for. I don't believe I mentioned when the round is over, you just take the player bag and you pass it to the next person. They're the new start player for the round. So start player just rotates normally clockwise around to the table, and you just keep going until 10 rounds have been played. So that is how you play Sagrada. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. I think I mentioned at the beginning, the game plays for 1 to 4 players, so there are solo rules that you can look into in the rule book as well. And if you do enjoy Sagrada, be sure to check out the expansions that have come out for it, because they really do add even more to a wonderful game. So that is Sagrada by Floodgate Games. Thanks.